Okay, guys, we're gonna try this again, albeit I think we're still like getting the shittiest connection. You trying with PlayStation?
I did.
Okay, I don't know if that'll help or not, but we're gonna find out because it's all still very hazy.
Streaming MST 3K all day, so.
Okay, I got 2 cigarettes left. This motherfucker's been reading an article about They Live. I cannot even. Hi, Invisible Moose. And now I'm mad. Now I'm mad as shit. We just saw They Live. I love They Live. I think it's the greatest leftist film ever made. Point blank. So far, so good. Okay, that's what I like to hear. So let's fucking talk.
LadyColumbia has come here to kick ass and chew bubblegum.
I'm all out of bubblegum, my niggas. So, we're reading this article by some nobody who decided to get a check mark from NBC. And like NBC doesn't have like The Verge and NBC and a whole bunch of online media outlets don't have a vested interest in mass media controlling the masses, or like NBC doesn't have a vested interest in fucking capitalism maintaining itself. So, okay. All right. Let's fucking get into it. So far, we're not even halfway through the movie yet by the person who's written this article. And they don't even understand the plot of They Live. They left out major plot points so that they can affect their point, so that they can like just sit there and talk their shit and like make their argument make sense, right? Which is what you do when you're like a first-year college student. You do that in like high school English. You don't do that like when you're a member of the mass media trying to educate people. So the premise of this guy's article is that They Live is anti-Semitic. Why are you sitting back there like a fucking member of Anonymous, bro? Who are you? Okay, whatever.
I left this shit. It looked apart like the Antifa super soldier that I am.
So he's saying that, this film is anti-Semitic. And I'm like, where? That's what I'm saying. What? Where? So,
do I need to read the article?
Yeah, you need to start all over again. Sorry.
You want me to start now? Do you have more that you would like?
I don't have more. We're going to start. He's going to start reading the article. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear him. So I'm going to like be reiterating stuff.
Mentioned on Twitter that They Live is a mass of anti-Semitic tropes.
It's a mass of anti-Semitic. So I want you guys to think about what that means for a moment. Our modern conception of anti-Semitism comes predominantly from Nazi propaganda. And remember that Nazi propaganda is a paradox. Nazism acts in capitalist ways, but attempts to message in socialist ways. So the problem there is, I'll get to that in a second, Invisible Moose. The problem there is that there are certain things that, thank you, Invisible Moose. There are certain things that have been intertwined from socialist ideology into Nazis' conception of who Jewish people are. Jewish people as the capitalist pigs, as the capitalist class, right? So that can't be helped, right? But you have to, but in certain forms of, but in modern media, you have to be really attempting to imbue that storyline in a lot of ways, because that's not the only thing that characterizes Nazi propaganda. What also characterizes anti-Jewish propaganda isn't just Jewish people as a class who own a lot of stuff. It is Jewish people as parasites on society. It is Jewish people as vermin. It's Jewish people as the worst group of people on the planet. It is a great deal of things. So it isn't just so he is one thing that this guy's going to do is narrowly define what anti-Semitism is and kind of what anti-Semitic propaganda is, and he's going to use that as a way to make this film anti-Semitic, which of course I will continue to reiterate is completely in line with what his corporate masters want him to do.
Well, on that note, do we want to sidetrack into his article where he actually talks about what anti-Semitic tropes it's a mass of? Or do we just want to barrel through this?
Give me a broad sort of.
Broad strokes.
Give me the broad strokes. Is it long?
It's long. So far, I'm not even seeing anything about They Live.
Surprise, surprise. So, Invisible Moose, I mean, the whole like the news or secret lizard people is a thing. Trope is a thing. Yeah, apparently, it is a thing. I didn't get that from the film. I certainly didn't get anti-Semitic messaging from it. I got that these people, for number one, these people weren't vermin, nor were they depicted as, in my mind, there's a difference between a parasite and an owner of something, right? Leeching off society is one of those things that always has a negative connotation. It's something that's used against the rich. It's something that's used against the poor, et cetera, et cetera. But when you are in a position of owning, and one thing that I want to make clear is puts these aliens in the position of owning the planet Earth, its people, and its resources. Right? This isn't like a small group of people who have come to control, the center. This is not like Hitlery propaganda about the Jews. This isn't, we're kicking the Jews out of Spain because they got too much money. This is, these beings have taken like legal ownership of the planet Earth. If anything, they're closer to like the way Americans treated Native Americans and African Americans than they are, what Hitler would want us to believe about Jewish people. But
all right, so I found the part where he talks about They Live. This is a long article where he talks about other movies, but there's not a lot more than what was in the other one. But I'll read it quickly. Perhaps the best example of how radical and reactionary horror tropes sprout from one another is John Carpenter's 1988 classic They Live. In the movie, John Nada, a virtuous, optimistic, working-class protagonist, discovers that cadaverous aliens are living among us, controlling us with television messages that turn us into obedient, consuming drones. The movie is widely considered a critique of Reagan-era neoliberalism, and it is that. But it's also a story about the virtues of genocide. A white guy discovers aliens who don't look like him living in his town, and his first impulse is to murder them. Foreign, shape-shifting immigrants, like vampires, are a standard anti-Semitic stand-in for Jews. And They Live can be read as a fascist conspiracy theory in which brave working Americans finally recognize their racial oppressors and respond with righteous cleansing violence. So that's his massive anti-Semitic tropes. That they're shapeshifters that don't look like us.
My head is exploding. My head is okay. Let's talk about this. One, I can't even with that, because that is so much bullshit.
Also, vampires are standing for Jews, apparently.
What? Not, I mean, nah. Nah.
I don't know. Maybe Bram Stoker was.
Maybe, but like.
Jewish shit. I don't know, but if he was gonna do that, I think he would have picked like a Jew instead of a Romanian. I don't know.
Maybe he's a Romanian Jew.
I mean, he's not. Dracula is not a Romanian Jew, but he's a real person.
It's Vlad the Impaler. I know that. Stop. See? Let's see how this columnist acts. Here's what I don't. Here's so these aliens, that is even worse than what he wrote in his long article, because he acts as if these aliens aren't having this like negative influence on humanity, because the influence that the aliens are having on humanity is that they are lulling us into our baser instincts, right? Human beings are really good at finding a niche and like easing into that niche and being done.
And like, it's not like he just like puts on the glasses and it's like, oh, they don't look like me, I'm going to start murdering them. By this point, he's realizing that they are controlling things, that like there are subliminal messages everywhere, and like he doesn't start shooting them until after one of them, like the old lady that he first like kind of like fucks with, like gets on her little wristwatch and he's like, he can see us, whatever, and
basically orders a hit on him.
Yeah, and like cops who are also fucking aliens come and try to like arrest him and whatever and subvert him and all this shit.
And we have seen what the cops do.
And like the thing is, they were actually probably legitimately trying to subvert him.
Right.
Like, hey, come work for us. We'll make you rich, because they do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So let's get back to the article.
The notion that it's fascist propaganda is ridiculous.
Now, to be fair, there are fascists who think it is anti-Jewish conspiracy theory, but they also fucking see the Matrix as being red-pilled. So, you know, whatever. Fucking movie by two trans ladies. So
Those trans ladies.
All right, so mostly people screamed at me for daring to criticize the film.
Tonight we screaming. And before you start, Invisible Moose says, vampires are the scary monsters for Republicans. Foreign, seducing, corrupting.
I mean, vampires, from most literary interpretation that I've ever read about vampires, has been that they represent, at the time, what we would consider now, I guess, the capitalists, but at the time, the aristocracy.
Yeah.
Like, they were literal vampires who were sucking off the lifeblood of the peasants, you know.
And isn't it? And what I find incredibly insulting about this article is that it's taking a great piece of. It's that in a lot of ways, it is the very type of propaganda that They Live seeks to undermine. Okay, it is. This article is attempting to subvert and divert your attention from the messages of They Live by saying it's anti-Semitic, right? Oh, these messages are anti-Semitic. When you actually think about the film, mind you, I just watched this film. When you're thinking about the film, what you actually find is these messages are devoid of those things, because the framing context that they put these messages in is, right? The framing device that Carpenter brilliantly uses at the beginning of the movie is that these messages impede racial justice, that these messages are keeping us divided. Because what Carpenter is saying is that the status quo that is capitalism is by its very nature racist and anti-Semitic, right? So by telling people to obey what is inherently a racist anti-Semitic order, or a racist, anti-Semitic, and you know, misogynist regime, right? You are continuing a cycle of racial injustice. Carpenter sets that all up.
And if you're gonna have, like, you know, this seemingly like fascist neo-Nazi resistance, do you really think one of their leaders would be a disabled black man?
Yeah, no.
Anyways, but there are a couple points that sparked some interesting thoughts, so I thought I'd write briefly about them here.
Because he thinks he's smart.
He's wrong.
Too many people on the internet think they're smart.
As fans know, They Live is a story about a working-class white guy who discovers that aliens are using media to control the minds of humans.
Pause. That is wrong. That is fundamentally wrong. Aliens are not just doing that and like siphoning our resources. These aliens have created an entire subliminal messaging system underneath what is already a media that supports the status quo, right?
And interestingly, we never really learn what their purpose is.
Yeah, no, we don't.
Like, it's never really made clear. Something about, like, being on Earth helps them achieve multidimensional superiority is, like, the closest thing that we got to, like, an explanation of what they're doing. And beyond that, it's very unclear.
So, Invisible Moose, I want to get your comments in. You say, this thing is anti-Semitic. Quote, this thing is anti-Semitic. It is bad. That thing people say about it's about some of the most progressive people in content out there. See Sanders Corbin. Not that I think the movie compares to them, but still, LOL.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And interestingly, this guy on his timeline, as I was reading him, was complaining about people calling Bernie Sanders anti-Semitic, but here he is calling this anti-Semitic for no fucking reason, so whatever. Our hero, Nada, Roddy Piper, finds glasses which allow him to see the aliens for what they really are as they walk among us.
So, pausing right there. Stop right there. He ignores a major plot point of the movie that again sets up why this movie is a great leftist movie. This remember that this guy is an abuse victim, disenfranchised. He is disillusioned by the system. He just wants to work, get a little money. He's not really concerned with, I got you, Scott. He's not really concerned with like material culture. He just wants to work his everyday life. Okay. He is intrigued by the messages that he sees coming from what we find out later to be the church and a group of subversives. He ends up being brought to this village of subversives by his African-American coworker. Says, hey, dude, you need a place to stay. Like, I stay at this place. You know, they'll feed you. It's whatever. Well, much love, darling. And it's from there he sees the messages. He sees the activity in the church and is intrigued. He breaks into the church kind of during a sermon in which he finds these sunglasses. Now, he thinks, okay, this is a little weird, a little shady, but from what the movie entails, this is what the movie is telling us. He sort of thinks the people at church are selling sunglasses to make a little money to feed the people in this encampment, okay? It's only when the cops show up, start murdering the preacher, the subversive older guy who's on television trying to break through their signal, that he decides he's really going to investigate what's going on here. Because why would the power structure invade a space that has traditionally been used for charity, right? That is what intrigues him. When the power structure begins to act in a way that he thinks is odd and is extraordinary, and is not just odd, but is classist.
And extraordinarily, like, seemingly an overreaction.
Right.
Let's say, like, because a more pedestrian, like, reason that they could be being raided is that they're, like, selling contraband or something like that to, not even, like, drugs necessarily or weapons, but just, like, knockoff fucking designer.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, they're infringing copyright or some bullshit. Are they gonna, like, bring in bulldozers and like raise this whole encampment and like beat the shit out of fucking everybody, like,
out of old men?
Yeah. Like, it seems like a bit much for, a white collar crime.
Mm-hmm. And that's what intrigues him initially. When the power structure flexes its muscle against a small organization that seemingly is just feeding people.
And like they show up with like an army.
They do. They show up with the SWAT team. These aren't like just regular. These guys are like riot gear. They're ready to destroy, and they are brutally attacking the people in the encampment. Aren't they killing people in the encampment too?
I don't know if that's ever like specifically shown, but I feel like it's kind of implied. But yeah. It also shows him hidden messages in advertising and media. Fashion magazines and billboards tell him to procreate, consume, and obey.
He forgets one of the more important ones. No independent thought. But we'll get into that in a second.
Carpenter intended the film as a critique of Reagan's 80s capitalism. It depicted marginal workers and homeless people being exploited for the interests of wealthy aliens who had come to plunder our planet. Unfortunately, embodying the evil and shape-shifting, assimilating alien invaders makes the bad guys look less like a homegrown capitalist class and more like anti-Semitic imagery of parasitic Jews. Carpenter is broadcasting messages he doesn't understand.
Pause. This guy is interpreting messages he doesn't understand. That's really clear.
And reading messages
into this. Because at no point do we see any of John Carpenter's They Live is what, 82? 88. At no point do we see any of the traditional tropes that we associate with anti-Semitism, right? These people are not depicted as having any religion necessarily that is analogous. They're not depicted as Semitic in any way. If anything, you know, they're not ever shown as being Semitic people. If anything, they're only ever shown as being very much wasps. They're not shown.
I think there was one guy who was like Asian.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was all like very waspy.
These are not people who, you know, you don't see any subtleties of them. They're not implied. There's no implication of them being Jewish people. There is no, there are none of the you don't see any, you know, you don't see the kind of covetous Jew meme. You don't see anything that would lead you to believe that these people are in any way analogous to Jewish people, right? Which in my mind brings up that this guy, and this is going to be a little bit controversial, this guy has some latent anti-Semitism. It's not, you know, overt. This guy isn't like, you know, rah-rah Nazi or anything, but that this guy very much views Jewish people in the way of rulers of the earth. And that if you are depicting any group of people as in an ownership class who are who as an ownership class are doing things that are negative and that are impacting humanity in a negative way, that is analogous to Jewish people. You see what I'm getting at? That any depiction, right, could be considered analogous to Jewish people, which it can't be, right? Because there are very specific tropes that Nazism in particular, the Nazism in particular compiled and broadcast that we associate with anti-Semitism. And those tropes are not present in They Live.
And basically, from anything I can find right now, the idea of the shape-shifting Jew lizard people kind of thing, like that was started by David Icke,
right?
Icke, or how
David Icke.
To pronounce that. I can't find any earlier example of it.
No.
And the first time he ever mentioned anything like that, and it wasn't even like that, he hadn't like gotten it to that point yet, where it was like he just said he saw something weird, like somebody's eyes like flickered or whatever on TV, and that was in 1989.
Yeah.
He didn't get to the point where he was talking about shape-shifting Jew lizards until like I think the mid 90s or early 2000s. So this was not a trope then.
Nope.
So you can't even like say that.
Agreed.
All right. So in that context, you can see They Live itself as a subliminal meaning hidden within a surface image.
No, because you haven't explained how, sir.
Because it's using tropes that weren't developed until after it was made. Yeah. But in this case, the glasses, by assuring you that you are seeing the anti-capitalist truth, actually blind you to the anti-Semitic skull leering underneath.
I bet you he thought he was smart when he wrote that.
Fans are deceived not because they are passive victims of an alien conspiracy, but rather because they join the director in putting on a willful blindness.
No. That's not how that works.
You are told by the film that propaganda is an inescapable force, imposed by wily shape-shifting outsiders, which can only be pierced by the aid of higher spiritual technologies, provided notably by resistors hiding in a church, that Gentile symbol of purity. But in fact, propaganda is often a collaborative effort between the speaker and the listener, who together agree to construct the image of a wholesome community around lies and exclusions.
Okay, so this is where I completely lost my mind. This is actually where we stopped. We were just having this conversation, and this is where I stopped it and said, I'm turning on the camera. We're fucking doing this. Because that is a very modern conception of how propaganda works. It was not until the advent of things like cable access that people began to become mass media, okay? Up until the 1930s, really the 1930s in modern society, really on into the 40s, even really past the 40s, right? Because, you know, if you count things like Sovietology and its influence on government policy in the Soviet Union and the way that people thought of the Soviet Union, and again, not tanky, but certainly Sovietologists had a very overinflated view of the power of the Soviet Union. And then come the 1980s and 90s, it starts to be exposed that, you know, the people in the Soviet Union are incredibly poor, they're incredibly downtrodden, that the Soviet Union is not nearly as powerful as Sovietologists claimed that it was. When for most of human history, people have not been able to decipher truth from propaganda. Okay. For most of human history, propaganda was the truth because most people were not literate. Most people could not find outside sources. So what the structure of power told you about what the world was what the world was. For most people, unless you were close enough to that power to know that they were double speaking or to know that they were lying, or you were in a battle so for example, there's a famous relief of Tutankhamun. Okay. The ancient Egyptians were great propagandists. There's an ancient relief, I believe, of Tutankhamun, of Ramesses, I believe the second, winning a battle and he claimed in Egypt, I won this battle. We fucking did that shit. But historical records say he lost that battle. The ancient Egyptian people likely would have believed he won that battle. Unless you were there and saw him lose, you won the battle. Another great example is the Battle of Ghent. The Battle of New Orleans. The Battle of New Orleans in the United States during the War of 1812. Both sides, both Britain and the United States, claimed to have won that battle. Now, when it came to official documents, both sides claimed that battle was a stalemate. Okay. But the people of the United States believed they won the Battle of New Orleans. And the people of the United Kingdom believed they won the Battle of New Orleans. Okay. For most of human history, you believed what power taught you. And even to this very moment, a lot of people do not have, and it is not some inane IQ thing, most people do not have the skills, because we in the United States in particular do not develop the skills for people to critically think about issues, right? And policies and things like that. We just do not have the skills to question whether what government is telling us is true, which is why you have this exponential rise in things like conspiracy theories, because we know that government lies to us and we know that people in power lie to us. But because we don't have the skills to critically decipher why they're lying, what the motivations are, what could be the possible truth, a lot of people tend to rely on, well, it's a conspiracy theory. There's a shadowy organization that runs the world. The Jews run the world. There's lizard aliens that run the world. Think of this too. Convenient, and this is kind of an aside, but conveniently, the lizard theory is something that it succeeds this movie, right? This movie is the genesis for people of that trope, right? This is where that comes from, okay? Back to the original point, propaganda is not a collaborative effort. Right? Those who imbue propaganda, who are in power enough to propagandize, okay, they spend a great deal of money, time, and effort to ensure that you, me, him, and everybody else who is going to touch and feel and see and interpret that propaganda does not have the cognitive ability to decipher what is the truth and what is the propaganda. Okay. Corporations, governments, want to ensure that there is so much information, right? Not even ensure, but governments and corporations and power structures know that there is, at this point in human history, that there is so much information out there that it's damn near impossible to decipher what the truth is. So they are perfectly satisfied with effectively telling you, yeah, this is what we do, but you're going to have to dig through millions of pages of documents to determine that. And you're going to have the skills to be able to interpret all those documents and be able to put those data points together in a way that actually makes sense. Okay? It's not a collaborative effort. It never has been, nor will it ever be. And to say that is the height of classism, because that is some Harvard-educated fuckwad, okay, who thinks that his fucking $500,000 education that daddy paid for on his fucking black card, all right, means that he is smarter than you, the everyday fucking person who wades through this world, who puts up with the bullshit, who puts up with the propaganda, who puts up with the lies that people tell directly to their faces, all right? He thinks he can tell you better, all right? Because he's so fucking educated. I love you too.
In this context, it's significant that none of the messages the aliens send are racist or anti-Semitic.
We've already talked about that. Carpenter sets up at the beginning of the film that these messages impede racial justice and impede us being able to stop things like racism and anti-Semitism. So he is fundamentally wrong in that.
When you put the glasses on, you do not see any signs saying, "Kill the Jew." The capitalist messages you see cover up the capitalist messages you don't.
You handle that. I can't. My brain. I can't.
I mean, you already like touched on it. Like, it's already embedded in those messages that you're obeying. You're obeying the status quo. You're obeying the status quo, which is racist, which is patriarchal, which is
anti-Semitic.
Right. So it's not covering it up. It's embedded it within it. You dumb.
You a dum-dum. Not y'all, but this nigga dum-dum.
Not me either.
Not him,
the
but
person we're reading.
Who is this guy?
Noah Berlansky.
Noah Berlansky, you a dum-dum.
Noah Berlatsky.
Noah Berlatsky, you a dum-dum. Either for hire or for truesies, you a dum-dum.
It's also significant that the centerpiece of this film is a fight in which Nada physically forces his black friend, Frank, to put on the glasses.
So this is it. So Scott, first I want to get to your side. As an aside, Keith David and Roddy, who is the protagonist in this movie, those two recreated the fight scene in Saints Row 4. They appeared as themselves. That's pretty fucking awesome.
I need to play Saints Row 4 at some point. I actually have it on Steam, but I've never played it.
So we're gonna have to play that. Bitter Carella says Noah Berlatsky has the absolute worst takes, and I agree with that.
Thanks, Dave Rubin.
Like, y'all, I'm admiring the fact that my skin looks nice in this terrible lighting. I love it, because at work my skin looks terrible because that lighting is harsh on my face. It is always very dark, and our place is really competing for the darkest place on the planet. Anywho,
shall I continue?
So we were talking about the black. Did we finish the whole quote on the black friend?
No. But
start from the top, and we'll loop back around.
It's also significant that the centerpiece of this film is a fight in which Nada physically forces his black friend Frank, Keith David, to put on the glasses. Now, do you want to stop there, or do you want me to keep going?
Keep going until. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, honey. I appreciate that. I love the new color too. And thank you. You're very sweet. Keep going, and we'll just loop back around.
A white man is forcing a black man to see the truth. But what is the white man's truth? The movie would have you believe that Nada is showing his colleague the capitalist system that oppresses them both. But the glasses in practice conscript Frank as a soldier under Nada's leadership. His autonomy effectively evaporates, and he follows his white friend's lead into a barrage of gunfire and his own untimely death. Has he been enlightened? Or has he been sent to what Jordan Peele might call the sunken place?
This was the thing. This was the moment when I said
the moment when she freaked the fuck out.
So let's talk about this. Okay. The point I wanted to make to him when I turned on the camera was this. Black people have oftentimes have not been, that's what I'm saying. What? Black people, think of it like this. Try to think of it like this. I know, Bittercar, what the fuck? You've got to imagine living in 1809. Imagine living in 1809, you're a slave. And you're going to get free. Right? That seems like an impossibility. Everyone around you is a slave. Your parents were slaves. You're a slave. You're going to get free. That's a wild notion. Black people, in a lot of ways, have always had to have their eye on the prize. Okay? And in a lot of ways, sometimes that means turning the blinders on to all the injustices around you and moving forward. A lot of times Black people have, if Black people spent every day, every moment of every hour of every day thinking about every injustice ever done to us in the United States, you better believe Black people would not be trying to integrate into the United States. We'd be an Al-Qaeda-like force in this motherfucker. Okay? Sometimes in order to get through your life, in order to get from point A to point B, you've got to just say, fuck it. I can't deal with every cop murdering a Black kid. I can't deal with every slave rebellion. I can't deal with every fucking Klan meeting. I can't deal with every fucking thing. I've got to just keep fucking going forward. And then this guy ignores that. This white man's bringing him the truth. Do you know why Keith David doesn't want the truth? Because he knows the truth already. He knows that he's Black. He's fucking Black. He already knows there's an overarching force controlling society. They're called white people. Okay? He already knows that. He already fucking knows it. But he's got a wife. He's got kids that he wants to see. And he is trying desperately to get from point A to point B, to work his little fucking job, to make his little fucking money so that he can buy his little house and he can fucking bring his wife and kids out to be with him and live his fucking life. He doesn't want to have to deal with all of the injustices, with all of the shit, all right, that goes on around him. He just wants to fucking live. But what Nada brings him is, you're never going to see your wife and kids, and you're never going to be able to live that life if you don't see the system around you that is preventing it. You have to see it. And the perfection of that fight is not in their race. The perfection of that fight is in Keith David being the proletariat, the people of any country who just want to live their fucking lives, who don't want to see capitalism destroying them. They know it. They know it in their heart. They know that the system is fucked up, bruh. They know that they're broke and they don't know why. They know that there are people out here buying 10 Ferraris while they can barely afford to feed their families, but they just don't want to have to fight another goddamn war. They don't want to have to fight the fucking rich and hope that the next system is better for them. They think they can eke out an existence with this one, so they're willing to fight no matter what it takes. They're willing to fight the truth at all costs because they don't want to have to fight the greater war around them because, like for Keith Davidson, it could mean their lives. The fight is a seminal moment in any movie, probably one of the most pivotal moments I've ever seen in a movie. One of the most metaphorical moments I've ever seen in a film for what everyday people go through every day of their lives. Sometimes you fight not to see the truth. I've done it. I've done it in my own life. I fought not to see the truth. And I was unhappy for years because of it. But one day I saw the truth and I woke up and now I'm here. That fight means more than anything else. That we are going to have to beat down our brothers and sisters who want to hold on to this system because they know it. They're getting their little money. They're getting their little lives. They're getting their little meals. And they just don't want to fight another battle. We have to be, we are the rowdy Roddy Pipers of society. We leftists are the ones who are beating up our fellow fucking citizens and saying, you gotta put on these glasses, bro. And I'm gonna beat your ass to the fucking ground and force them on your face.
Because we are all out of bubblegum.
Because we are all out of bubblegum. God fucking damn it. We are going to destroy this system that has killed probably more people than communism and feudalism put together. We are going to destroy this thing that has crushed us for centuries. While it fed us just a few more crumbs than feudalism did. We are going to destroy it. But first, we're going to have to beat down every motherfucker who doesn't want to see the truth. And this dickhead is one of the dickheads who's getting a few more crumbs than everybody else. And he knows that when it comes down to it, he ain't gonna be on our side. He know good and well when it comes down to it, if the revolution come, he gonna be on the rich people's side.
Up against the wall, motherfucker.
So he is one of the people, he's one of the collaborators with the aliens. He's one of the people fighting to ensure that the system stays in place so that he can keep his little crumbs. Well, God damn it, Noah, you ain't keeping them today, boo-boo.
So you don't think that that Frank went to Jordan Peele's sunken place? Is what you're saying?
Frank died fighting for the cause. And that's all that fucking matters. He died fighting for the truth. He was protecting his family. He didn't go to the sunken place. And I resent fucking his misunderstanding of that movie too.
One thing I think you didn't touch on earlier that I think you
talked
about when we were talking.
Yeah.
Was who the big collaborator is in the movie.
Oh, so interestingly enough.
And also, I don't even know if we really talked too much about the fact that there are collaborators.
So another seminal piece of this film that he leaves out is that the biggest part of this is that there are a bunch of human collaborators. Thank you, Bitter Corella. That there are a whole bunch of human collaborators. And the face of these human collaborators is the union boss that appears at the beginning of the movie and doesn't really want to give Nada a job, but does. He's the one paying Keith David and Nada pins, okay? And he represents the death of union power. Union power being converted, being absorbed and captured, if you will, by corporate power. Okay? And he represents the last dying vestiges of working class power. Right? It's a good fucking movie. If you ain't seen They Live, you got to see They Live, nigga. If you a leftist, you got to see They Live.
See how smart my baby is. Just pulling that shit out.
Thank you, baby.
So smart.
Thank you.
There's only one paragraph left. Sum it up. No doubt many will ignore They Live's warning and conclude that the only message is the obvious message. That's the genius of the film, which lulls you to sleep by the very blaring insistence with which it tells you to wake up. It gives you glasses that you may not see. The end. That is word salad. That doesn't mean fucking shit. And I bet he felt really smart when he wrote that.
Yeah, he felt real smart after writing this, but he's not.
Also, so one other thing about this article, it has 4 tags on the end of it. John Carpenter, They Live, anti-Semitism. Here's my favorite one. Truth.
Shit. And I happened to Google this guy just to maybe see some old things. And I happen to notice an autocomplete result on my Google search of his name that I thought might be interesting and that might anger you more. And I was right.
Hello, microbloganism. Mm-hmm.
So this is a tweet from Noah Berlatsky, or however the fuck you say it.
All right.
I wrote about how Paul Atreides has all the powers because he's a white colonizer in the Tarzan tradition, and about how mighty whitey powers are appropriations of other people's labor and goods.
You just like seeing me angry. You just want me to be in a perpetual state of like purple hair and anger.
I just saw Noah Berlatsky dude, and I was like, uh-oh.
All right, first let me get to Invisible Movie. I'm gonna have you read it again.
Get to your comments.
Why did someone even write an article talking about a 30-year-old movie? What brought this up? I have no idea. It's weird too because we just saw it. Like he's seen it as a kid.
We literally watched it because we watched bad movies together, which has been established on several of our streams. And I was just like, I remember it as being like this schlocky sci-fi movie from the 80s. And I was like, oh, this will be a good. But I also remember it having like some cool lines, you know, I came here to kick ass and chew bubble gum, blah blah. I was like, this will be a fun little schlock romp, and we'll watch this and it'll be a good time. And then we're like, wait a minute, this movie's really good. We fucked up. Like, it's great that we're watching it, but it's also like not at all what we thought it was.
No, and it was a delight. It really, if you haven't seen They Live, you've gotta fucking see it because it encompasses a lot about it, you know. So before we get to the Dune tweet, let me talk about why They Live is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, leftist film ever made. Because what it does is encompass all of the thing. It puts into metaphor and puts into perspective all these things surrounding leftist politics, like the crux of leftist politics. So you have this system that people are blind to, and you need a device to wake them up. And the only and you have this disenfranchised, transient white guy who really just kind of wants to live his life and not really be involved. And then you know, and it's kind of, you know, he's willing to get into a little bit of shit, but not this level of shit. You have this black guy who has a family, you know, he has ties back home. He just wants to, you know, make a little money out here in California and move back to Detroit, you know, with his, you know, and bring his family out of poverty and move into a different class. He's trying to work the capitalist system. But in that, he explains capitalism to Nada. He says, you're going to try to do your best, and I'm going to try to do my best, right? And we're going to stomp all over each other to get to where we just have this much. He understands what capitalism is and why it's oppressive, but he doesn't want to fight. And really, Nada kind of wants to fight, but not really. You then have, you know, Nada experiences the kindness of these people who are living in effectively a socialist collective and who are abiding by this notion of taking care of one another. And he sees the power structure crush them. And it intrigues them. It really intrigues him. Why would they do such a thing? And it leads him to this discovery that that incident was not some random occurrence, that this is an everyday form of oppression, that affects people everywhere, every day, at all points in the world. And he is fucking determined to do something about it. You know, he wants desperately to get other people to see that this system is destroying us. It is controlling us and it is using us. And in that, he resorts to violence as a means of both trying to eliminate the threat and trying to get people to see the truth. He then says, you know what? That's not fucking working because violence is used against him and it disables him. So he then says, you know what? This is not the way to do this. The way to do this is to find a more, you know, and it's actually Keith David's character who says, listen, there's got to be more than just you and I who see the truth. They discover that, yes, there is a resistance cell. And a woman that he thinks that he is bringing into this resistance cell is actually a collaborator. In that resistance cell meeting is also a really great metaphor for kind of the way leftists view politics. It's very much the argument of violent resistance against the system or an attempt to shut down the system in a way that is what one might call legitimate or legal, right? Trying to do things in a way that minimizes or eliminates the need for violence. And guys, I'm going to get to your comments in just a second. And in that moment when they're having that discussion, that's when the capitalist class comes in and blows the room up. Okay, leaving these two people, Keith David's character and Roddy Piper, to resort completely to violence as a way to end this. Keith David loses his life fighting to protect his family and his species, and so does Roddy Piper. It is very interesting that a disenfranchised, poor, disillusioned white male is the one who destroys the system, who exposes the world to the perils of these aliens. That's the pivotal moment, because in a lot of ways, that is the only way we are going to legitimately win against capitalism. It's when the working class blue collar guy says, you know what, this fucking shit don't work and I'm fucking tired of it. We need something else. They Live is a brilliant metaphor for a lot of aspects of leftist society, a lot of big arguments that leftists have. And I loved every second. I was turning to him and was like, I love every second of this. It's a great movie. I'm gonna watch it again. I might try to turn this rant into a more legitimate video, because I think it's important that we kind of eliminate the more ranty parts and talk about it from a much more like sterile analytical perspective, because it is such an important film to leftist thought in my mind. Cookie, do you have anything you want to say, baby?
Nope.
Okay. Before we get to Dune, we're going to get to the comments. Microblognism in response to Scott says, why would they make this film? Because they were bored. Really wish I had some of those sunglasses in real life. I do. I don't know where my They Live sunglasses are. I think they're in the bedroom, but I do actually have a pair, like a fake Ray-Bans. You want the ultimate 90s, this is from Michael Blognism. You want the ultimate 90s slug action movie? Stone Cold. So write that down. We'll watch Stone Cold. I've got several family members I would share them with at LMAO. Damn right. Bitter Corella says, a Twitter person says she wasn't aware of anti-Semitism around her while growing up, but then once she realized how pervasive anti-Semitism is in U.S. society, it's like getting They Live glasses. Agreed. And Berlasky jumped in to claim that They Live was anti-Semitic. Okay, so that's how this got started. He's a dum-dum. Also, I believe he accused the original poster of being anti-Semitic for making They Live glasses analogy. What a dum-dum. I'd like to see that video. And you know what? We're definitely going to try to work on that, he and I, because that'll be an interesting kind of collaborative effort. We have to start, I've been weird about making videos. I get home from work and I'm just like, I'm done.
I gotta get her angry and she'll make a video.
I get angry and then I'm like, turn it on. I gotta share this with people. So go ahead, read me that Dune comment one more again.
Well, I just went right to the fucking article.
We're not reading that whole. I'm not.
Okay, I'll just read you the tweet. I wrote about how Paul Atreides has all the powers because he's a white colonizer in the Tarzan tradition, and about how mighty whitey powers are appropriation of other people's.
He was born as the Quizart Satiract. He was not. He was born the Quizart Tataract. He wasn't. He didn't gain those powers by mighty whitey, tighty whitey, whatevers. Okay, like, two. The Atreides family are not viewed as colonizers. The Harkonnens are, because the Harkonnens are pieces of shit who abuse the population, and the Atreides do everything they can to try to reverse that. Paul Atreides and his mother are taken in by the Fremen.
But you could say that's like a white savior narrative.
That's not what he's saying, though. I don't.
Kind of does.
It's not a white savior narrative because they are attempting to integrate, because it's not them coming in and playing Captain Save-A-Ho. It's them seeing the Harkonnens' abuse and saying, okay, we know that we are in control of this resource and this planet, and yeah, it is about colonization to the extent that, you know, they're there to control the spice. But at the end of the day, it is the Fremen who have the power of life and death over Paul and Jessica, because it is they who decide, okay, we're going to take these two in because they are a valuable resource. In a lot of ways, that narrative is flipped, because it goes from Leto viewing the Fremen as a valuable resource to the Fremen viewing Paul Atreides and Jessica as a valuable resource. Okay. The Fremen repeatedly demonstrate themselves as the power of the planet Arrakis. They are subversive. They are not in league, but they are certainly have contractual dealings with the Spacing Guild outside of the control of the Houses of the Landsrod. They are the primary harvesters of spice, and they know how spice is manufactured. Which is something that nobody else seems to understand or know. The Fremen have not only an advantage in terms of knowledge and in terms of terrain, they have an advantage in terms of numbers, because when the book starts, we all know. Bye, Scott. Thank you, darling. We'll see you soon, okay? Not only do they have that advantage, but they have the advantage of numbers, because no one knows how many Fremen there actually are. The Fremen are an extraordinarily powerful force, and Paul Atreides brings them a valuable resource, a voice from the outside world, that can help teach them things that they have been isolated from. So he doesn't gain those powers, right? Because chemistry isn't a thing in the Dune universe, I guess. So he doesn't gain those powers because he's just some white kid. He gains those powers because, one, he earns them, right? He goes through the trial, you know, tried and failed. No, they tried and died. And because he is the only male who can transmute the spice, because chemistry.
And also, normally, LadyColumbia is all down to shit on Paul Atreides.
He's a whiny bitch. He's a stupid whiny bitch who abandons his children. Okay, mind you, he's abandoned by his mother. Ollie is abandoned by her mother. He abandons his children.
It's a lot of bad parents.
He leaves his only son to sacrifice his human body and his human mind and soul to become the savior of mankind because he's too much of a bitch. But that's a whole different story. We're not arguing about that. We arguing about the fact that this nigga repeatedly misinterprets works in order to benefit his own viewpoint, and that's fucking wrong, and I hope he gets what the fuck he deserves. Don't let me have caffeine after 9 p.m. I get rowdy. You know, y'all know what I want to do tonight?
Rowdy like Roddy Piper.
Yeah. Y'all know what I want to do tonight? I wanted to fucking masturbate. That's out the window. I came to y'all. I came to be with y'all. Because I love y'all. So, I'm going to work to try to make this into a more legitimate video so that, you know, we can, you know, maybe make some views on this bitch. And so that maybe we can get into discourse and really make Noah look like the dum-dum that he is, because he's a fucking dum-dum. And I swear, and you know, as a former English major, it pisses me off. Yeah, we already did, but it pisses me off because I was good at literary interpretation and I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And this fucking dum-dum is allowed to write whatever the fuck he wants to, probably because he's fucking white. Anyways, I'm out. So, the usual greeting. I've missed y'all. I will be seeing you soon. Good night, good morning, and good afternoon. Great Pirate Solomon, what would you like to say?
Hey, everybody. Great Pirate Solomon here. Peace out.
That's what he does. hey everybody, Great Parent Solomon here. Like that's his little like thing, and I love when he says it. I smile every time. All right, guys. Well, let's good night. Good night, Micro. Mwah. Yeah, in this bitch.